Welcome to Fantasy or Reality, the All Recovery series. My name's Steve, and I'm the host of this podcast. We're going to be doing something a little bit different going forward here in this podcast, where I've talked mainly about gambling and gambling addiction and recovery, and that's still going to be a huge part of this podcast. But what I've wanted to do is bring others on who have had different pathways into recovery. And my first guest on this podcast is a good friend in recovery, someone that I've known well the last several years because of our partnership with the New York Council on Problem Gambling. This is Erinn E. She works for the New York Council on Problem Gambling as the team leader, and she's been in long-term sustained recovery. And I just want to have her share her message. And really, what we're going to talk about here is what people have done to sustain their recovery long term. There's a lot of podcasts and stories out there that detail the nitty-gritty about addiction, and I feel like there's enough of that out there. And I want to put more of a positive um, message out there of recovery and what works because I feel like so many people just don't know what to do. They're ready to change, they're ready to stop. And we have great people like Erinn who are brave enough to share her story. So thank you very much for doing this, Erinn. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Steve. So, as you said, I'm Erin. I am a person in sustained recovery, which for me means my and I'm in sustained recovery from an alcohol use disorder and substance use disorder. And for me, that means that my last drink and illegal substance was August 21st, 2014. So I am 11 years in this recovery journey.
Mhm.
And hopefully in August, nothing's promised, but one day at a time for me is how I look at it. And so, I'm hoping to celebrate 12 years. But there were hundreds, if not thousands of times where I wish I had had the word recovery in my life that I had tried either in a structured way through arrest and then going to treatment, through trying meetings, through family interventions, through waking up and just feeling awful and being like, I'm going to stop. And I stopped a few times, 3 months here, a few days here. I couldn't stay stopped, but every time I tried, I was a person in recovery. And I just did not have that language available to me at that time. If somebody had said, hey, when's the last time you went 3 months? Let's celebrate that. If you had an episode, let's talk about it. Like I just, so that brings me kind of back to my what I would call a relationship with drugs and alcohol. I definitely made that a relationship like I would have with a friend or a loved one, and that's what made it so difficult and so confusing for me is that I didn't also have the language to understand that I was in a health crisis and to give myself kind of that grace that I was in a health crisis. And even though I had experienced trauma, I mean, I drank from 13 on, and I would say me and a handful of friends walked into a party, and two of us looked at each other and went and winked and said, "This is it." No matter how much trouble we get in, no matter how much work it is, no matter how many sports we have to give up, no matter how bad our grades get, we're going to try to do this again. And I would say also to the old me that it was a survival skill. I had grown up in a household where there was some violence, and so I had to figure out, I was constantly trying to please and dance. And so it was stressful. But when I had that first drink, I was like, oh, this is kind of what ails somebody with a low self-worth. And it was the key that went right into the lock that I carried, which was give me the energy to keep entertaining, give me the energy and kind of this feeling. And so ever have a friend that gets you in a lot of trouble, but you're like, I'm going to defend this friend no matter what.
Hmm.
Um, I knew that me and alcohol led to me and drugs, or me and theft, or me in danger, or me re-traumatizing myself, becoming my main abuser. And I still would say it's not the alcohol, it's me, it's you. It's
Yeah.
so I really had found a way, kind of a Rolodex of reasons that I really, every time I went to a treatment facility, every time that I went to a 12-step meeting, every time I went to a therapist, I tried all different ways. And every time I did that, my hope really was for it to work out with alcohol. How can I still keep that and not have all of the bad outcomes? And scientifically, if I had just said, the last experiment, which was almost 12 years ago, was when I didn't have a lot of fight left. I wasn't living, but I wasn't dying. And it was gray. It was nondescript. It was a kind of a soul death. I just was not even surviving anymore. I had no fight, I had no fire left. But I did know there was this little voice, and it sounds crazy, but that just said maybe there's more. And so I tried to get into an inpatient. First, I tried to go to Florida because it sounded like a great place to recover
Yeah.
in a hot tub. And so I tried that, and they said no. And for me to get rejected would have been the first sign to go back out and go, here you go, I tried. And I didn't. So self-awareness started to kick in, and I don't know why, and I don't know how. I'm just saying it did, and I said, well, I'm going to try to go to an area inpatient. And I told them what was going on, and they said, listen, you have to fail at outpatient, where I had been 5 times before, and sincerely been 5 times before.
Yeah.
So they said, you have to fail at that. If you fail at that, then you can come stay with us. And something in me said, I'll be damned if I'm going to fail at this. It could kill me. And so I showed up at this outpatient in my town, intensive outpatient, where I had been before. I used to say, like, they raised me. They saw me at 17, they saw me at 20, they saw me at 25. Now they're seeing me at 41. And I was dressed like just like I was going to my first day of school. I got up, I got showered, I got ready, and this thing happened. And I can't describe it other than it was a dopamine drop from something other than the ways that I had been finding the escape from my reality, the artificial kind of Niagara Falls of dopamine. I had this like watering can that just felt really proud of myself,
Hmm.
even though I was scared to death. And I would talk to people like it was like the first day of kindergarten. I was like, I'm Erinn and I need help.
Yeah.
And I started saying things like that out loud. And the things that I said out loud, like, grabbed my guts and just said, this is where you're supposed to be. Perhaps this will work out. I saw out people that had the same vibe, like, I don't know where this is going, but today I'm going to just be here, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to share, and I'm going to connect. And so I went every day like I was going to school for 7 weeks. And in that time, also, I came home to an empty house. My son did not live with me. My family wasn't talking to me. And I thought, I'm still showing up, and nobody's here putting the red carpet out, like all of these things that were very unlike me. But I was like, maybe this is the real me. Maybe this is my character. Maybe when I'm not afraid, or when I've got this place that I'm in is where I needed to be. But I was so afraid that the window would shut. Like, I have to really um keep learning about myself before the devil finds out,
Yeah.
you know? And it was a healthy fear of losing my motivation. And again, I started reading about myself as a health patient, as having a health crisis. I started talking to my counselor. I started going to, because I was home alone, I started going to AA and other 12 step. I had friends that went to NA, and I said, I'll go, I do drugs too. Can I go to that group?
Yeah.
And then there was a Christian-based meeting called Celebrate Recovery. And I said, it was at a soup kitchen. And I said, can I come? I just needed to be safe. I just needed to be safe. And I really love awful coffee. So it was,
Well, that's
so
the
I
place to
went.
go for the awful coffee, that's for sure.
Right. I just went wherever I could, wasn't bouncing around my house because I was learning to reacclimate to my house, to be like, oh, I eat off of a plate. I go to bed. I put myself to bed. There were things that didn't make me feel bad about myself anymore. It made me feel really fascinated. Like, and my body got tired and I let it sleep and I didn't lie or feel like lying about it. Or I would say if I was afraid or if I was proud or if I was, it was almost a return to innocence. And I was around a lot of other people who were doing the same thing also. Connection for me was very important. But that's how I started, was by, before I had ever heard multiple pathways, I was just like, hey, I can be kind of temperamental, so I better make a salad in case I go to one of these groups and I go, I don't like this today. So to thine own self be true. I was like, I better have some backup plans. And turns out that really wasn't the case. I just got more, I got more friends in recovery.
Yeah, it sounds like you were doing the multiple pathways before you even knew about multiple pathways, just trying to do anything you could because
Yeah.
it sounded like this time was the time that you
I
were
think
ready.
recovery people have a really great intuition. We're returned to intuition. My heart and my head can, go uh go at it and kind of mislead me, but my intuition returned and I was around a lot of other people that were like, "Oh my God, it's so strong now." Like you'll meet a lot of, as you know, recovery hippies that are like, our eyes have been opened. And it's the same world that everybody else lives in. But when you're forged by fire, you just kind of go, did you know that that song played twice when I needed to hear it? Like it's this weird synchronicity. You believe in more.
Yeah. Now I'm curious, before I jump into the questions I have for you, I think this is a question that a lot of people uh, think about or just wonder like what is it finally like for like all of us have tried to stop 1,000 times before we finally stopped for the last time. What was it this time that was different for you? What was it that you felt in your heart or like looking back on it now, what was it that you feel like was the change or the feeling or the thought or what what was it that helped you stick to it this time?
Okay, so I've thought about this, and I lived long enough to get to a place, and that was a blessing that is not necessarily promised. But every time I tried, I learned something else about myself, whether I tucked it away or forced it, out of my mind. I did learn something about myself every single time that I tried. So it was about building an agreement that this was not for me. Like if you do, if I don't agree with something, it's not going to happen. But I was in total agreement this last time that I don't drink safely. I'm harmful to myself and to others. And so there was no love letter left. There was no love letter in my back pocket that said, "Hey, babe, haven't seen you in a while. Remember the good times? We can." That was dashed. So when I was in 100% agreement, there's really no stopping me then. When there was just no delusion that I can drink safely, if I can't, and I'm not jealous of people anymore that can.
Yeah.
That would be another thing that would get in my head. That's a love letter. That's, I wish it would work out.
Yeah.
And I saw substances as powders and liquids instead of friends.
Yeah. Yeah, we can we are not like other people who can have a drink socially or Smoke a joint socially, we know that it will lead us back down a road that we don't want to go
Right.
down. I mean, we would
I
be,
don't need to alter my reality. Like the best life I've ever lived is honestly in my reality. Like I shake my head at the avoidance because I get so lit up by being alive.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
even the bad times are manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I love this life of recovery more than anything previously. I mean, I basically can handle whatever life throws at me now without the first thought being, oh, I need to place a bet, or oh, I need to go use this substance to help me deal with the situation. I know I've got the tools to handle it because of the recovery methods that I've used that have worked for me. So that's the first question I want to dive into. So we already talked about how long you've been in sustained recovery. You're coming up on 12 years, which is awesome. Congratulations. That is not easy to do. So I hope you're very proud of that.
Thank you.
Um, I know I'm proud of you for that. So the first question I have for you is, what have been the tools that you've used in recovery to maintain it successfully? And what have you found that works best for you and why? And then maybe pick one of those things and kind of give a little bit of detail, maybe for people who don't know much about a meeting or therapy or whatever worked best for you, and then give a little detail so the people listening can kind of understand what they might be walking into.
Okay. So
Please.
for me to go into treatment, I said the main tools in the beginning were as as I've called it, the Harvard of my life. Like I didn't treat it like therapy and AA. I treated it like I was going into a master class on myself. And selfish in a way I had never been before, where it was just about learning as much as I could, self-awareness, learning as much as I could. So when I went into treatment, sometimes you have to trust people you don't know,
Hmm.
and it's okay. And it's okay if they let you down or they don't let you down. You know what I mean? I just started to see people with a kinder light. Like, I'm capable of that. I'm capable of not being able to be present right now. So I would be like, I can forgive and I can also be forgiven. So I had to pretty quickly trust my counselor in a way that I had never trusted anybody before. I became a truth vomiter. And when I say the truth, it was no longer the truth about you, it was only about me. It was never like, what about you? You do this and you do that. Like that was just lifted from me. It was only about my my role in anything and how I got where I was. But I will say that a 12-step program for me um, meant the world. Now, I would say be accountable to anybody. If you say, I go to the gym and if I show up half-assed, I can't work out and my buddies are mad, like you're accountable then. You're accountable to fitness, you're accountable to physical health, you're accountable. For me, I had to say, I took every coffee commitment, not because I like making coffee, but
Yeah.
because I knew myself. And I said, I will not go to this meeting if I don't have to get there early, make the coffee, and greet people. What would be my biggest obstacle? What would be my biggest chance at not making it? So I would do the opposite. I would take that commitment and I would listen and I would listen with kindness or I would share in a way that like they took my uniquity instead of me being like, if you were me, you would drink too. If you were me, you would do drugs too. Um, that was no longer useful for me to be like a part of the world felt amazing. And they taught me lessons. I need a recipe. I'm that kind of person that needs a map or a recipe. And someone said to me, you can take what you need and leave the rest. That does not mean to, go in and uh, crap all over a meeting. It meant, can I sit and disagree and still come? because I would take things like that, like, oh, if I don't agree with how someone's acting in this room, then I just won't go anymore.
Mm.
Instead of being tolerant, it taught me tolerance, and it taught me service, and it taught me pause, like wait a day before you, because I was still on Facebook, and I someone would say something that I thought was hurtful, and I'd go, why I am bound by this program to wait 24 hours before I say anything. I had a sponsor who I called and talked to and worked through these steps. And when I say take what you need and leave the rest, for me, I said, I'm going to tell everything to my therapist and I'm going to still work the steps and trust this person. But I mean, I still fashioned certain things in a way that made me feel safe, that still made me feel like I was following the recipe, but maybe still making it something that looked like my life. It had to look like my life, or it was not going to be sustainable. So I did 12 step. But then I would say the most miraculous thing that happened to me was a friend of mine from childhood. I bumped into her in Target and she said, I am going to be the executive director of this thing called a recovery center. And I was 3 years into recovery, working a job that I really liked. I was doing things that I had never done before, which was it's not the job that I want, but it's the job that I got. And I show up and I do my best.
Hmm.
My son doesn't move home, but I'm still always available by phone, and and we have dinner once a week. Like not everything went my way, and then other things did go my way. So am I a good winner and am I a good loser? I had to find out, like, does winning make me think that I've got it? And does losing make me think that it's not worth it? And I tested myself until one time, something happened in my life. And a few years ago I got breast cancer and I said, when did something like this would happen and I don't even consider having a drink? Isn't that awesome?
Yeah,
Like it doesn't even
absolutely.
seem like a solution. What would that do? If I had been in the grips of my disorder, I would have never caught the cancer. I would have never been physically taking care of myself.
Yeah.
So, which I did, and I'm fine and I'm healthy. And so anyway, I'm talking in circles. My friend says, I'm opening a recovery center. Will you come volunteer? I like your recovery. I think you're doing really well. Would you come do a women's group? And I thought, I'm anonymous. I don't want anyone to know because then they'll be waiting for me to have a return to use, right? I didn't know if I really trusted me or my community, even though in my recovery, I had to go to social services, I had to go to food banks, I had to go do things that really put me back in the community. And instead of feeling ashamed, I felt really proud of myself.
Yeah.
Um, so I went to the meeting that she had on the vision team for a recovery center. And I said, yeah, I'll do this women's group. And I did have some issues with my 12-step program, being kind of worried about this other way. And I just said, I love you guys. You saved my life. We're family and I'm going to do this anyway. So I didn't feel like I had to choose. And I went there and we started doing things like having a women's group, going mountain climbing, watching movies about stigma. And I started hearing these words, recovery and multiple pathways. And it was all the things that spoke to my soul. I was like, yes, this is it. And they got a grant and they hired me. And I left my job that I really did a really good job at and I showed up all the time. But then I got this job to work with it, to be a certified recovery peer advocate, which I had never heard of. And they sent me to Buffalo to go to class. And they encouraged me to go back to college. And they were like, what is, you've got 3 years of recovery, you go to all these meetings, you do all this stuff, but what do you want? And that's where the next part of your question comes in. I had to start finishing things that I had started before. I had to go back to college. I didn't have to. I was like, I want to finish this. I started it. I want my son to see it, and I want to finish this.
Yeah.
Um, So the tools that I had, of course, recovery gave me new tools. Like I said, I knew how to pause. I knew how to apologize. I got some grace. I got some gratitude. I knew how to pray right. But a lot of the tools that I had in my bag, like a hammer, like I just was using it wrong, and instead of breaking things, I started building things. And I had a light and I was like, oh, instead of, you know, highlighting all the things that could go wrong and all the things that are bad, I'm going to perhaps shine it on possibility and hope and healing. And so I think everybody has those tools. We're super resilient and we think that somebody like got us out of this pit. No, you filled that hole until you walked out,
Yeah.
like, and there will be other divots. I've had divots in my life, but there will never be a hole as Aaron shaped and as deep as the one that I lived in during my the heights of my disorder.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much for that. Um, the next question would be, what recovery methods have you tried that didn't work well for you and why? And you don't have to go too deep into it, but just was there anything that you tried out that didn't really work well for you?
Hmm. There's not a room I don't belong in. And like I said, I went into these like with the take what you need, leave the rest. Everything's a lesson. Everything is, can I sit and listen and not agree? And can I agree? I'd never gone to any kind of meeting where I didn't take something away.
Yeah.
And so it was about learning that. So, for me, you know what? No one ever gave me the opportunity to do inpatient. And so I don't even know what that's like. But if and they don't have fail first anymore, which is great. There's no more, it's
Mhm.
illegal to tell somebody that they have to fail at outpatient to go into inpatient. Um, but I will say that there are so many ways to go that if you feel like I said that hey, harm reduction, I'd like to do less. What would that look like for me? What would, if for me, I can have nothing. And I know that because it quickly escalates. But do I also understand that if somebody maybe had said to me years before that, like, we're going to walk into this lake of wellness and you can have episodes of return to use and we're going to just go from there. We're going to find a space. So there's no tools that I wouldn't recommend. I think you know what speaks to you. And my only advice, I guess, I'm not big on giving advice, but have some backups,
Yeah.
have a few things so that like the older I get, the more I look towards Buddhist recovery.
Hmm.
Um, I am always looking for other ways to kind of flex my recovery muscles. And so keep it growing, keep finding your jam.
Yeah. And that's the whole point for myself for this question is, you know, to have people maybe point out something that maybe didn't work for them, but to also highlight like what we were talking about before with the multiple pathways, where if something's not working for you, that doesn't mean that you're failing at recovery, or that doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful at recovery. There's not only one way to recover anymore. And if there's something that's not working, don't give up. Try something different. With the New York Council on Problem Gambling, we can call you and you can give us multiple pathways to recovery.
Yeah.
So the point
I
is
think
basically,
also people don't look at structural and environmental factors. Like we put everything, the onus on the person.
mhm,
And I want to say to individuals that yes, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, find the things that work to you, that work for you and connect with you because if it doesn't look like your life, it's going to be a diet. You're going to have resentments and resentments are just the worst, man. But
absolutely.
it's also what I have found my purpose in is shifting the soil in the community because not everything I was that story about the sick tree. And they said, okay, well, we're going to put you in a greenhouse and we're going to give you all this love and oxygen and food and sunlight. And I got better, and I did. And then I got planted back in the soil of my community. And if I hadn't been 3 years in introduced to a recovery community center, I don't know if that soil would have felt like enough. Like I said, oh my God, there are people that believe in recovery. There is a community here. There's more to do. But even in my small town, recovery is a more common phrase than addiction. It's a recovery story, not an addiction story. And
Yeah.
that alone is just beautiful.
Yeah, I see the multiple billboards when I've driven through your town. So they're very recovery oriented, and I love seeing that.
If you use that language enough, and I don't know if I believed that in when I first started in this, I was like, my name's Erinn and I'm an alcoholic and whatever else that meant. And that process and those groups are dear to my heart. But when we try to get advocacy for money, for treatment, for access, for policy, I'm Erinn and I'm a person in sustained recovery.
Yeah.
And by me being a face and voice that people can see, because I had my addiction in this town. So for me, anonymity is not something that I require. I was at my worst in this town. So I will be damned if people don't see me at my best.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Um, so that will now lead me into our next question. So aside from your recovery tools, what have you done to rebuild your life and restore purpose and meaning?
Like I said, I took on, I was very encouraged to go back to school. I worked at a place that said, we will support this. So I went back and got a 2 year degree in chemical dependency. And I was like, oh, that's what I think I want to be. My recovery made me feel like everything that I had been through had led me to that place. Like I never knew what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, I very much knew what I wanted to do. But when I wasn't in school, I had this kind of little dip in my feelings. I was like, am I depressed? Am I, what is this? And I realized I loved education. And so I went back to online. I did everything online. And that for me was amazing because I don't think I have the best attention span. And so it was a discipline that I was really proud of myself and I kept at it, and it took me a little longer than the average bear, but I ended up getting my bachelor's degree, and I worked for an agency at that time before coming to work for the Problem Gambling Resource Center. I worked for this recovery center, and they sent me to every training known to man. You're going to learn about medication. You're going to learn about trauma. You're going to learn about you're going to go work at treatment court. You're going to work in the jail. You're going to work in outpatient. I got to be in all of these spaces, and I just really was on fire with purpose about being this person that said, um, you can do it. What can I do to help? And then when that kind of I felt like I had done a lot in that area. My son was like 23, and I had this really good relationship with the Problem Gambling Resource Center and the New York Council on Problem Gambling, and they had a job opening. And I thought my next challenge is prevention. My next challenge is having this conversation, planting these seeds
Yeah.
that can be watered at any time. Like prevention was confusing to me because I was like, oh, prevention, you can even go through addiction and go back to prevention. It's when you choose to water the seeds that make sense for you, right? So in prevention, we are throwing those seeds, we are being that protective factor, we're giving that information. And it's really such a personal strength for somebody to say, um, I didn't water it right away, but when I needed it, that seed was there.
Yeah.
And so I have also found so many of my friends that walk the same path like you in such a community where we're all joined together in this recovery community. And so I still get to be very much a part of a recovery um, mission, kind of a
Yeah.
recovery movement is what
Yeah.
I would call it.
That's awesome. So that actually perfectly leads into the next question, which would be, um, what has worked for you to sustain long-term recovery? Because essentially, for a lot of us when we talk about recovery and changing our lives and rebuilding, purpose and just, a lot of it's focusing on the first year, the first 2 years. Like, what do we do to put out the fires? What do we do to rebuild a life? Okay, great. The two of us have been in sustained recovery for a long time. We've done the hard work. We've gone to meetings, therapy. We've learned about our addiction. We've done everything we could to rebuild our lives. Now we've done that. So now for the person who's got several years in, and they've rebuilt their life, right? You hear about it, unfortunately, too many times where someone's got 5 or 10 years and then there's a relapse.
Mhm.
So, for people like us who are successful right now in our recovery, what has worked for you to sustain your long-term recovery?
It's going to sound cliche to say gratitude, but I keep it green. Like if I start talking about how it was, it's it's right here, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, like I said before, recovery for me is a discovery journey. So I continue to find myself fascinating and I find other people fascinating. So I took care of the thing that was going to absolutely wipe me off the planet, right? Um, so now if I have an energy drink and I go to grab another one, my whole life is like an episode of Law and Order. I'm like, chung chung, why did I do that? Or I'll
Uh-huh.
go,
Yeah.
like, did I order that off of Amazon because I need it or because I need a hug? And I don't do these things in a vacuum. I have a partner who's in recovery. I have friends who are in recovery. I also have friends who are not in recovery, but they understand recovery. They're family members or friends or allies. And so we have these, what I would consider not recovery conversations, human conversations that bring everybody into the fold and not in a stigmatizing, not in a shame, not in a way that makes anybody, but in a way that makes us all smile and say, how are we doing today? What did we do right? What went well? And sometimes I sometimes I get up and I go, oh, I got to go to bed at 7 today. Like I'm really not good for anybody.
Yeah.
And I laugh. I laugh at so much. I trying to get boundaries or driving or things that everybody goes through. Um, I will do this thing where I like zip up and I'll picture things bouncing off of me. Like I have made my life in my mind this like cartoon strip, but it makes me feel a part of. It makes me feel like I'm a part of. I'm okay being a grain of sand on the beach of humanity. I think before that wasn't okay with me. Now I'm like, oh, that's big picture. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's more of the gratitude and I will say self-awareness without shame. Um, acceptance always like I said, I laugh at the that are now. It doesn't mean I don't try to fix them. If I'm in debt, I don't laugh for a really long time. I go, oh, I have to figure out why I'm doing the things I'm doing, and I
Hmm.
have to talk to somebody. And now my board of directors in my life is no longer like Jim and Joe and cousin Sue. And, I make sure that my board of directors are people that know what they're talking about when it comes to law or money or health or whatever. And then my family and friends get to be my family and friends. So this is a 12-step phrase, but easy does it, but do it.
Yeah.
So I'm self-aware, I acknowledge it, and I accept it, and then I take action.
Yeah. I find that to be one of the great things that I've gained from recovery is being able to be I'm so much more self-aware when it comes to anything. It doesn't have to be, gambling or, drug use or anything like that. It can be as easy as if, like just eating too much of something or using like taking too many halls in a day. There was a time period where I recognized I was taking like 10 to 15 halls a day. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Am I just like bored and I'm just throwing these things in my mouth? Or is it really necessary? Am I really coughing or am I just, reaching for something to throw it in my mouth because I'm bored or using it as a breath mint or whatever? So I recently stopped really using, halls. I essentially just like now if I'm going to take them, I'll throw like two or three in my pocket, and then that's all I will have for the day. I don't have a bag in my bag anymore. It's like where I just will can mindlessly grab them. Or was using too much of like this toothache gel. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just like I'm using it every time I have the mildest ache where it's like I actually now I am not using it. I'm like, okay, that ache went away. Was I just using that because just every single time I got an ache, it just recognizing even the little things that I can overdo and then cutting it out. Or,
Yeah.
last night, Kelly, my wife had gotten a bunch of cannoli chips. And, I was like, I'm just going to eat like six and have a few because that's the serving size. And I realized I'd eaten like 12 of them. And I'm like, okay, gotta close it, gotta put it away because I know myself, I will eat this whole dang thing if I don't stop. So,
Right.
just being aware of stuff like that. And then also, like you said, not beating myself up, not having shame, being like, oh, well, see, here's these old behaviors again. It's just, no, I'm aware that these things can happen and just make a better decision going forward. Okay, I ate too
Right.
many cannoli chips last night. I won't do that today.
Yeah. I know now that I can do hard things, right? And so I'll be like, well, in its time, like, is it time for me to take on coffee? Or is it time for I know because I am self-honest and I am a goal getter. So when it is time, I also get really excited about the outcome, not just the discovery process, but when I start to budget. And I'll just say to people, like, when I say in early recovery, I was a truth vomiter, same to this day. People do not want to know everything that's on my mind, but if you're in my circle, you probably do.
Yeah,
Because the minute I share, there's this thread that I've found that attaches all of us. And there's this knowing laughter in the room where we all go, yeah, me too.
yeah,
Even if it's not the exact same thing, it's the same.
yeah. You can completely identify. I just went to a meeting at New Choices recently. It's a recovery center here in upstate New York, for those of you that are listening. And I have a relationship with one of the clinicians there. And he had asked me to come speak at his group, and it's an all recovery group. And I shared my story um, and my recovery, and everybody's in there for different things: drug use, alcohol use, gambling, just different things. But we can all connect the dots and we can all relate. And I'm talking and I'm seeing people nodding their heads, they're smirking and smiling because,
Yes.
maybe they didn't, you know, place thousands of dollars in bets, but they know what it's like to have drank a 12 pack and then buying another 12 pack when they can barely walk. Or they said they were only going to do an eight ball, but they ended up buying another eight ball. It's just like we all can relate, whether it's gambling, drug use, anything, because it's all the same crap that we got inside ourselves that we just don't want. We don't want to be ourselves. We don't like ourselves. All that negative self-talk that leads us to one substance or one thing or another.
One person sharing like you did will let other people feel safe to share.
Hmm.
And I can talk about ancient aliens and get just drops of feel good feelings like I used to, before drugs or alcohol were ever in my life. Remember when you would have like you'd play hide and go seek or you'd get an A on a paper or all those things, they're still good things. They still
Yeah.
feel good. And so when I connect with people, generally I have found our tribe to be very open and honest and willing.
Yeah.
So when you are in those spaces, I've gotten people that are outside of there to open up with honesty, I'll go first type of thing. But when you do the whole me too, I get it. Um, and that shame and stigma is down. It's like, it's so powerful. It's that I want to feel this way. This is better than all of the other stuff. This feeling of connectivity, of humanity, of hope, is just such a great feeling. And it's powerful in change.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, again, perfect segue into the last question I have for you tonight. And thanks again for doing this. Um, what words of encouragement or suggestions do you have for someone just entering recovery or may be currently struggling? I know you said you don't like to give suggestions, but or advice, but I'd love to hear any type of encouragement or suggestions you have for someone who's just entering recovery or maybe struggling.
I have a couple of things, and one that is typical of me, which is more of a metaphor. But I would say to anybody, you're worth it. You're stronger than you know. Keep going. Um, but in that, and find what looks like your life. Fight for that. Fight for that part, and that you can say, I want this in therapy, and I want this kind of group, and I want this like I started fighting for the right things. I knew in my gut what was going to be sustainable for me, and it's been going pretty good. But the metaphor that I would say I came to realize early on when I first got that volunteer gig at the recovery center before I got hired, which was we all started climbing mountains together. We were not the most athletic group of people. Some of us were still smoking,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
still, drinking a lot of coffee but we were like, we're gonna go climb a mountain. And there's a lot of mountains in the area that I live in. There's a lot of places to go and climb a mountain at various levels. But when we did it together. There was always somebody that had been there before to help. We made sure we had the right tools. We had water, we had directions, we had a flashlight, we had a peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
Um, I remember having to stop and this kid being like, "You can do it. I'll wait with you. Don't worry that they're going ahead." So it didn't go in a straight line either. We didn't start at the bottom of the mountain and just pop up to the top.
Yeah.
There was a lot of twists and turns. There was a lot of rest stops. There was a lot of water. There was a lot of leadership and also fellowship. And we got to the top and the view was amazing. And I think that everybody saw something different, even though the view was really incredible. And you would have said, well, you're all at the top of the same mountain. Um, we all got there together, and there was going to be nobody left behind. So I cannot say enough about finding a tribe and trusting. Sometimes you got to trust people you don't know,
Yeah.
and knowing that if you are in a like-minded community, such as recovery, that you are all going to make sure everybody gets to the top, and then ask somebody what they see, and then tell them what you see. If nobody asks, tell somebody what you see from that view. And I guarantee that that will just be the beginning of the mountains you climb. Because somebody said to me years when I was struggling, like, prayer will move mountains. And I would pray and I would pray and I would pray. And first of all, I didn't pray right because I prayed like I was asking Santa for gifts, but I would pray. And guess what? The mountain never moved. But in recovery, I moved. I moved. I went up the mountain. And I'm not extraordinary. I am just a regular person that surrounded themselves with people that wanted me to win and gave me respect and information and space and kindness. And so go get those things and climb those mountains.
Ah, Aaron, that was awesome. Thank you very much. That was a perfect way to end it. Great metaphor. I love it. Um, yeah, that's the thing with recovery. It's like we all stick together in one form or another. Some people are going to be at different points of the journey than we may be, and it's all right if it takes us a little bit longer or a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But we're all striving for the same goal. And yeah, when you get to the top, we all see this same beautiful thing, this life of recovery. but it's going to look a little bit different for all of us. But as long as we do it together, we work together, we can make it, and then we can climb the next mountain, and we can, we get a little bit stronger each time. Our wind gets a little bit better, and now we can go up the mountain a little bit quicker. So when that next person joins the group, we can now help them, and we can wait with them.
Right on.
We can help them get
Exactly.
there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. This was really great.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you to everybody who was listening or who has listened to this podcast. And I appreciate anybody who's been here since the day one. And thank you so much for Aaron for doing this. And I look forward to hearing your responses. And if anybody wants to reach out to Aaron, let me know and I will pass along the message. But just remember, be good to yourselves and each other. Bye.